I've got an Australian story.
Never told anyone that before.
Never knew that they were safe for 9 months.
Wonder why I'm obsessed by fire.
I can tell my story.
Learn from these wild animals of the bush.
My Uncle Town, and I love it.
Yeah, well, that's my Australian story.
It was a devastating scene, even for the rescue workers themselves.
Complicated microsurgery saved her life and attempted to put her face back together.
It flipped over and erupted into flame.
He's since emerged from a coma and made a new life.
Hello, I'm Pamela Traynor. I'm a filmmaker and writer. Throughout my working life, the stories that have interested me most are uplifting, about people who overcome overwhelming odds. About 1.5 years ago, this came very close to home for me when my young daughter was injured in a road accident. I wanted to help her, and to do that, I felt I needed to meet other people who'd overcome severe trauma and go on to lead fulfilling lives. And I wanted to understand just why some people transcend disasters that would crush most of us. So tonight, on Australian Story, you'll be meeting 2 of these people. And I hope you'll find their stories as inspiring as I have.
That people, when they see me or when they first meet me, find me curious. Somebody described it to me once as being a bird with an injured wing, where people want to look after you and help you and do things for you, but I'm fiercely independent. I had never been involved in aviation before, and my brother and my sister and I got together for my mother's 50th birthday, and we bought her a hot air balloon flight. When I went out that first morning with my mum and met these people who are involved in the ballooning and the aviation industry, and it turned my life around. I suddenly discovered that there was a world out there, all these wonderful things to experience. And within a week, I'd left my job and I was working for the hot air ballooning company. I started to learn to fly. I'd just changed my life around 180 degrees, and that was within one morning. My mother and I often reflect on that morning and how much of an impact it really did have on my life.
We're trying to get these systems into Nepal, but they don't want to ship them from India. They actually want us to ship them direct from Singapore. And it creates some aggravation for us because essentially India is head office for the bank.
All right, done. I work for IBM. I'm currently the International Marketing Manager for Australia and New Zealand. I've been with IBM now for 18 years. I'm responsible for all the international business that IBM Australia and New Zealand does with its large customers. So all the business that the big banks do in other parts of the world, and all the business that comes into Australia from international accounts like the Sonys and Deutsche Banks, and there's thousands of those.
Tough one.
I get on the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, tough one.
I find it very interesting to reflect on how people react to me. When I'm dressed in a suit, for some reason that seems to give me some level of credibility. That if I'm dressed in a suit, I must be working, and if I'm working, I must be reasonably intelligent, so I'm a reasonable human being. If I'm dressed in casual clothes, and even though they're pretty groovy casual clothes, if I'm dressed in them, it's a different reaction altogether. You know, it's clear that people see me quite differently.
It was through flying that I met my husband, Nigel. He was a local pilot, and when I first met him, I remember, it's just like a movie, he came walking through the fog on a very cold winter's morning, and he was just the typical Biggles character. He had the brown leather jacket and he had the moustache, and he was gorgeous.
I don't know exactly what attracted me to her initially, apart from, she's very good looking. But she was always the life of the party, and that's what attracted me, was just her bouncing all over the place and so full of life.
The aviation community is very close-knit, and when something goes wrong, we all band together, and we'd heard that a plane had gone out on a training flight and not come back. That was on the 21st of December 1990. Nigel and I went down the next morning to help out, and I was requested to go on one of the planes as an observer with 5 other people. So there were 6 in total. I knew 4 of the people, 2 of them particularly well.
She went out that morning, and I can even today can hear the sound of the aeroplane taking off. I was first aware that there was a problem. I was working in a hangar, and a friend of mine was listening to a radio, and I heard very clearly, "Mayday, mayday, mayday." And of course my heart jumped. It was only probably about 2 minutes later, and he called out and said, "It is definitely for Parley Madola, there's a problem." And my heart sunk, and unbelievable. Even today I'm emotional, because when you're so in love with someone and there's a possibility of losing it.
4 killed during the search for a missing light plane.
It was about 45 minutes into the flight, I guess, and then all of a sudden, without warning, there was a huge bang. The aeroplane just started vibrating violently, and there was oil spraying all over the windscreen. So we knew there was a major problem.
The Cessna 210, with 6 on board, had engine failure. The pilot gave his position, then calmly reported 1,000 feet going down, out of control.
We had about 2.5 minutes from the time the engine failed to impact, which is a long time. And the first thing I remember hearing the trees hitting the wings. And the next thing I remember, I just felt like I was being tumbled. I have been told since that we didn't actually flip over, but just from the violence and being thrown around, it really felt like I was in a washing machine, that I'd been tumbled over and over and over. And then, all of a sudden, it was just still, and there was silence.
Pilot David Wilson reported a grim scene to other search aircraft.
Yeah, it doesn't look real good from here.
Yeah, roger that.
She was trapped in the aeroplane for several hours. 4 good friends up ahead of her, 2 of which died instantly, and 2 died while she was watching. And she was surrounded by that for several hours, and the sights and the smells and everything, it's just horrific.
The survivors, a man and a woman, both have back and internal injuries.
I was very well aware that my back had been broken. I was slumped over and I tried to sit up, and I could feel the bones grinding together, so I knew that I was in serious trouble.
Look at that rainbow out there.
The day I had my accident was Easter Monday, about 24 years ago now. I've heard about all sorts of other people having incredible accidents that were horrendous in so many ways, but mine wasn't. It was a very simple thing that I did. I simply got up off the beach, ran down the beach and dived into the water, and the water was just too shallow to take the dive. I ended up flat on my face down in the water. I opened my eyes and could see the bottom of the sand underneath me, but had no movement at all. I now know, of course, that I'd broken my neck.
It could be a little rough further out, though, I'd say. Can you see the spray up there on the headland?
It took a little while for the people on the beach to realise that something had gone wrong. I remember holding my breath for a fairly substantial period of time. I'd certainly held my breath for longer than I'd ever held it before. And somebody off the beach ran down and pulled me out of the water. But it was just unremarkable. I'd like to say that I was involved in helping the world from ultimate destruction or saving some damsel from distress, but that wasn't the case. It was just very, very simple. The doctors knew straight away how serious the injury was. They didn't tell me immediately, but I recall even days after the accident that to me it looked as though it was going to be permanent and that I would have to start planning my life from then on with the understanding that I'd probably be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. And it was probably a good idea to start planning early because that's exactly what happened.
Allana's been left with incredible injuries. I mean, on that day, her spine was torn apart. Her spinal cord was pulled out of the spine and it was left in the muscle on the side of her body. She had internal injuries. One of her feet had been turned right through 180 degrees and facing the other way, so all the ligaments had been torn off. Just unbelievable disfigurement. I mean, even today, she's still got the imprint of the harness on her skin. If you look at it, it's just amazing. The webbing is still imprinted on her skin, so it's an amazing force that she went through.
Nigel was there every day. He'd arrive at 8 o'clock in the morning and he'd feed me breakfast. He was doing my dressings, and without him and without his support, I certainly couldn't have done it. I think the most confronting moment in hospital was when the neurosurgeon told me that the spinal injury was as bad as it was and that he didn't expect that I was going to be able to walk and that I was going to have to spend most, if not all of my time in a wheelchair. I never really felt that I wasn't going to walk. I found with my recovery that it was really important to set goals. When I started walking, I thought today I'm going to stand, and then the next day I took 2 steps, and it progressed, and I'd say, right, in a week I'm going to be taking 10 steps, and they were goals that were achievable.
So do you remember that day though?
That was when she came home for the first time, wasn't it?
It was rather special, wasn't it?
It was. You try and help. When she was here and she was practicing up and down the stairs or walking around, and I was hovering, trying to make sure that if she stumbled or fell that I'd be there to catch her. And she turned around and says, "Look, Dad, bugger off. I've got to do this on my own." And this was the spirit that she's had all the time.
I spent a total of 10 months in hospital. Medically, I'm classified as quadriplegic at level C5, 6. In practical terms, that means that I've only got limited movement in my arms. I can move my hands but can't move my fingers. And I've got no sensational movement below the armpits, basically.
How's that?
Okay, that's good.
Push the cushion back.
Push the cushion back. I get 31 hours of personal care support during the week to help me function. I remember having a very interesting discussion with the occupational therapists and others. This is just a classic. They said to me one morning, "You're going to learn to put your socks on." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to do that." And they said, "Why? You know, you've got the wrong attitude here. You've got to learn to put your socks on. Everybody puts their socks on." I said, "How long is it going to take me to put these things on once I know how to do it properly?" And they said, "Well, it'll probably take about half an hour, but, you know, it's taking 2 hours now, so that'll be major improvement." And I said, "Look, I'm not going to have time when I get back into the real world to spend half an hour every morning putting my socks on. It's just not something that's of any value to me."
How's the weekend?
Oh, not too good. Same as usual.
I was 16 at the time I had the accident. I couldn't see any reason why I couldn't go back to school, I couldn't get back to university and go on to work. Now that I look back on it and know how difficult it really is, I was probably optimistic to the point of foolishness to some extent, but the reality is that I have been able to do those things anyway, and being able to plan it really took away a lot of the potential trauma of the whole thing. My family love me, and I love my family, and I remember particularly with my sister, who's been just my best friend forever. She just provided me the sort of support that I really needed at the time.
What's that? What is it you're doing?
Oh, economics. It's making me sick. Well, with a high school certificate coming up, I have to do some work.
Yes, Faz,
So should you be doing some?
I went to see Mark every day in hospital because I wanted to. He was my brother, my only sibling, and he was there in the hospital on his own for a very long time, and I felt that I wanted to be there.
So it's I Spy, with my little I, something beginning with P.
Pillow.
She had an expectation that I would make the best of my life. I think that's quite crucial. I've had that from all of my family, mum and dad as well, have always indicated to me that they were always going to be there for me, always going to provide the support I needed, but they also expected me to put some effort in. And I think that's very important. I was being treated as normal. Is it, oh, television?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
When I got out of hospital, well, I was literally waiting for a miracle to happen. I thought once my birthday arrived that I was going to wake up that morning and I was going to be completely normal. And when that didn't happen, I thought, okay, well, exactly 12 months from the accident, this miracle is going to happen and it'll all be just a bad dream and I can get on with life. I remember standing in the kitchen at home one day, I was by myself. All of a sudden, it just hit me that this miracle wasn't going to happen, that this was it for me, that I had to deal with it. I literally went to pieces. My injuries are classified as incomplete paraplegic. With my walking, I have a little bit of muscle movement in the top part of my leg, but nothing in the bottom part of my legs at all. It's like walking on nothing. I'm not getting feedback from the ground, so I tend to stamp my feet because I know I can hear myself hitting the ground. It's the only way I know that I've actually taken a step. Walking's not a pleasurable thing for me. It's tiring, it's painful. My walking gait is ungainly and it looks a little odd.
What do you think of my walking?
Looks brilliant. It's really good. I'm really amazed. You're walking on 2 sticks and it looks, yeah, you look really balanced.
Very good.
Can you pull your ankle up at all? No.
I'm terrified of hurting myself again. I'm frightened of hurting a wrist or breaking an arm because that means I can't walk.
Okay, yep, that's good.
It is very important for me to portray a very brave exterior. I have times when I'm not strong and I go through why me and I wish I could walk properly, I wish I could run, and when people stare at me I feel embarrassed. I have anxiety attacks and I go through a lot of emotions.
An accident like this puts an incredible strain on a relationship. You know, it's almost 7 years since the accident for us, and there's been some very hard times in there.
I met Julie, who eventually became my wife, when we were in the last year of university. So we were both only 20 at the time. And I was swept off my feet, so to speak. And we were engaged 3 months after we met and married 6 months after that. We were together for 16 years. It was really wonderful from my perspective because I love Julie so much. The breakup of my marriage has been the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with in my life. I don't think the disability even is in the same class in terms of the emotional impact that it's had on me. We always used to say that we shared a life, and I thought, well, that was wonderful that here we were together and we were going to sail through our life together. But I now realise that in reality we actually lived my life, not a shared life. Really, Julie put all of her life into making mine a success, and that was never really going to be sustainable.
After the accident, I really had to do some soul searching and decide whether I wanted to keep flying or not. The first flight I did was probably 12 months after the accident, and we had to come in and land at Camden, which took us over some trees and over a river, and I had an instant flashback, which I wasn't prepared for. And then the second flight was in a high-performance aerobatic aeroplane, and Nigel had been doing some work on it, and he'd taken the propeller off and put it back on, and then we went for a fly. And during the whole flight, I was just praying to God, because I was convinced that propeller was going to come off and we were going to crash. And I remember praying and saying, God, just get me on the ground and I'll never fly again, I promise. It wasn't until I started flying helicopters, which was about 3 years ago, that I really got that sense of freedom back in the air, and that love and that passion came back to me. It wasn't until I had control over the aircraft and that I was up there by myself again.
Well, Allana, the helicopter looks great. Are you happy that you've got everything prepared for the trip?
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Gary.
Helicopter flying is physically demanding, and in Allana's case, she's somewhat limited, and what she's been able to achieve is really outstanding.
Yeah, the helicopter itself is ready to go.
Allana has achieved more than just a private licence. She has a commercial licence to fly helicopters, which is if you're not going to fly airlines, it's the highest rating that you can achieve. So she's done extremely well, and she's a very, very competent pilot.
Next year, I hope to go to university.
Morning.
We'll probably follow a science course, and where that'll take me, I really don't know. I have thought of computer science. My mind hasn't been made up yet.
I applied for the job at IBM right at the end of my last year at university. It was a marketing trainee position. I made a decision not to let them know I was in a wheelchair before I got to the interview. I've found over the years that people make assessments over the phone of just what can and can't be done, and I need the opportunity to sit in front of somebody to convince them. Hi Marianne.
Hello, Mark. Hi, Mark.
It all to me seemed to be a very straightforward process from my perspective, but I've subsequently learnt that it was quite a challenge to IBM because they didn't really know how to handle the situation. Certainly nobody with quadriplegia had come to IBM Australia before. I think over the years it's probably cost IBM a few dollars to support me. For example, I travel a lot in my job and I need someone to travel with me, particularly overseas, and IBM has always, without question, provided that sort of support. From IBM's point of view, I think they see a productive employee who is contributing far more to the business than I'm costing, and everybody costs money to employ anyway.
Several years ago, Nigel and I started a business in aviation, and now we've built a hangar for ourselves, which is where we run it from.
Oh, hi. Is that the Roebuck Bay pub in Broome? Oh, good. It's Allana Arnot here. I made a booking there about a week and a half ago.
I'm about to take on a huge challenge. I'm about to fly my little helicopter around the coast of Australia.
I'm just ringing to say we might be one day late.
The logistics of the trip itself have been quite time-consuming. Obviously, having to arrange fuel and flight planning, emergency and survival equipment. Well, I think that everybody has certain things that they want to achieve in their life. I have a life list, which is a group of things that I really want to experience or achieve within my life. And, you know, if I say to myself, I am going to do this, I will do it.
I think one of the major reasons that I've been able to move through the ranks in IBM and do some of the other things I do outside IBM is because Julie was always there. I never had to worry at a day-to-day level about how I was going to get in and out of bed or whether there'd be somebody there. Now I do have to be concerned about those things, and it takes a lot of my emotional and energy and a lot of my time just organising that.
Go.
Hi, how you going? It takes about 2.5 hours in the morning to get ready. Only 15 minutes or so to get to bed at night. but I rely on that home care service entirely. If I don't have that service, I literally can't get out of bed. I don't really know exactly what my life will look like from now on, but I'm coming to the conclusion that I'm probably going to lead, at least for a significant period of time, a life on my own. I really prefer it that way. I've learnt a lot about myself. One of the things that I've learnt is that I'm much more independent emotionally than I thought I was. So how's Napoleon going?
How's Napoleon? It's beautiful.
When I think of the future, I'd like to think that by the time I've ended my productive life, I won't only have worked for IBM in big business. I'd like to think that I've been able to achieve some other significant things as well. Okay, you ready? I spend quite a lot of time outside IBM working with various community organisations, government advisory bodies, things like that. I've thought several times over the years about moving into politics and still do. It's something that interests me greatly because I don't think there's a huge amount of leadership really anywhere in Australia, but there's so much can be done. Good night.
Good night, Mark.
It's all looking good. I chose to begin the journey here at Prince Henry Hospital. It's also the base for Westpac Rescue helicopter services, and these people saved my life. And it's fitting that I begin my journey here.
This is Allana, and this is Lisa.
Hello, Lisa. How are you? Good. You've come all this way across the paddock just to see me.
I don't tend to look too far into the future. I really like to live for the moment.
Good luck once again.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay. See you.
Okay.
I think for me, to be successful in life is simply to be happy. And I think to do that, you have to have dreams. For some people, it's really hard to take that first step to make your dreams come true because you've got the threat of failure. But for me, failure is not trying.
As you can see, my daughter Jessica is completely recovered.
Mum, what do you think?
Oh, Jessica, it's gorgeous. She's graduated from university and she's working as a glass artist.
What's this sort of motive?
I know there are circumstances where some people can't recover. But what's inspired me about knowing Mark and Allana is their fighting spirit, their courage, their determination. And I'm grateful for that.